I wanted to try something different for my gold pay dirt reviews, so I got 4 pounds of Drywash Tailings from Jim Hamilton at jimbosgold.com. Now, if you're not familiar with what Drywash Tailings are, let me explain.
This is a typical dry washer. Dirt is shoveled in the very top where a classification screen gets rid of all of the large material. Underneath that is a black funnel which diverts the material that is classified down to acceptable size into the equivalent of a sluice box. It's a box with a series of riffles in it. Underneath that is a bellows or a fan that drives air up through the riffle bed, and also a motor that causes the bed to be vibrated. These two effects create a fluidized bed where, in principle, the heavy material, gold and black sands, are heavy enough to fall down and get trapped in the riffles. The rest of the material is either blown away as dust or flows down into a pile at the very base, which is the tailings. And this is what I bought and what I'm testing today to see if there's any gold in it. Now, how much gold is determined by how rich the pay dirt shoveled into the top is and how efficient the dry washer is.
In September of 2016, this 4-pound bag cost me $13 plus $6 shipping. So let's run it through the classification screens and see what it looks like. Okay, here's the classification. And this turned out to be interesting for 2 reasons. First is that the distribution of mesh size is very uniform, with the exception of the very largest material. The second is, and I don't know if you can see it because the contrast is rather low, but there is magnetite in every sample. And if magnetite can make it through, maybe some gold could also be in here. Now, this is too much material to run through a miller table very efficiently. So what I'm going to do is pan each mesh size down by itself. By the way, these are plus size meshes. In other words, this is what didn't pass through the 70 mesh screen. I'll pan each one down by itself, and if there's any colors, then I'll collect the heavies, and that's what I'll run over the miller table, because that is the most efficient and thorough way of collecting your gold. So let's get to panning and see what we can find. I've been panning each mesh size down to about a tablespoon and then saving it to run over the miller table. This is some residue from the 70 mesh material, and I had just about finished pouring it out into the container to transfer it to the miller table, and I did a little swirl, and I was amazed at how much color I started to see. There. There's probably 200 pieces, little tiny flakes of gold. This is not what I expected. I thought I'd find 1 or 2 flakes because these are tailings. I mean, this is what's left after the gold's been extracted. So I still have the 100 mesh and the minus 100 mesh to do, and then all of the material over the miller tables. But this is looking pretty good. And here's what I found. And I have to say, I am completely flabbergasted over finding this much gold in tailings. I figured, even though it was a dry wash machine, that most of the gold would have been extracted. And instead what I found were hundreds and hundreds and more hundreds of gold from minus 30 all the way down to minus 100 mesh. The biggest surprise, though, is I found 3 big chunky pieces. This is a plus 12, and these were both plus 20s. These are big pieces of gold to get through a dry washer. So, and in comparison, here's a grain of rice. So they're small pieces, but they're not flakes. They're chunky things. And that's what all of this stuff is like too. It's not fine flakes. These are chunky pieces that actually made processing the material over the miller table a little difficult because the miller table works not so much because the gold is heavier than the black sand, but because as a rule it's flatter, so it sticks to the bottom. Because this had body to it, it wasn't flat, it tended to move like the black sands. And here's a link for how I eventually overcame that. For $13, I'm very impressed with how much gold is in here. So let's weigh it up and see what we have. First up, let's see how much the 3 large pieces weigh. 0.058 grams. Now let's add the rest of it. 0.174 grams. That's pretty good out of $13 worth of tailings. So I have to say, I am extremely satisfied with this material. I suspect I got a really lucky bag, but just the same, this is a good product and very interesting to process. Thank you for watching.